Right, so just returning, and actually, it's actually the use of the any keyword. So I was doing live broadcasting until I got cut because a couple of people started messaging, so I had to sort of jump off the system. But I was at the point of the code. I wonder if I pull up the code again, if I've got it there somewhere. I'd have to minimize my screen again, restore down, and then move its width down. So I can just drag it into the little box like I did before. And the code was over here basically. And actually, one of the things you sort of like missed this, I guess, or because I cut the video off, but I didn't do a git commit, or at least a git update to update all of the stuff. So some of the things that I was fixing in the previous live stream has actually automatically been fixed. But nonetheless, it's good to have the errors because the errors get shown up. But one thing that didn't get fixed, if I zoom in, Control plus 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 a few times. Let's get rid of the sidebar because it's in our faces. One thing that didn't get fixed was this lock keyword over here, and the reason why that that method, not keyword. And how do I know it's not done? And it's hard to see the colors on the screen, but it's white compared to being yellow. So that piece here, they should be yellow if they're identified as a method of this object. And so this object fi underscore desk underscore pos, which is over here, so it comes from here, inherits from this thing here, so it gets whatever the return argument is from the load asset function. So when I go to the load asset function, if I just get rid of all of the stuff over there, if I go to load assets, so go to definition, we see that load assets returns an any over here. So yeah, that's why. Now I'm going to go through all of these bits, but basically it returns any because I guess it's got different types of returns here. It's got return here, return asset from S3, return asset from S3, and I think that's it. So it's got two possible potential returns over there. And yeah, I think that's basically it. And then otherwise it will throw an error. So it's going to return something or throw an error. But this particular thing here, this read asset from S3, if I go to the definition, it's over here. And it's this thing here, which is a pickle.load thing. But this function here returns any. So if that returns any, the previous function which is getting that, which is returning that, is going to return any as well. And I don't like that. So, and I will go around attempting to fix it. Hold on, I'm going to put all my volumes off because the sounds are on. So I will attempt to. Well, it's not for me to fix it, but I might mention it to the developers to actually fix it. But I was just looking at any, and I'll probably pull it up on my own screen rather than this screen going forwards. But I did do a quick GPT of the use word any. Here's my actual question, and that's probably why I'll zoom in because it's a bit too small on this screen. So I'll write the same question out. But kind of how should you use the any keyword basically? But while I'm looking at this, I see this thing here, this s3.get object, and this thing here, botto3 from client, create a low level, again, it returns underscore any. So yeah, it's looking a tiny bit ugly in that sense. So I'm going to drop that for now because I could attempt to go and delve into it, but it's more actually how should one actually even be using this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maximize this back and then minimize it out, and then pull up on my GPT here somewhere if I've got it right over there, and I'll go to I opened a few other GPTs, but oh no, my coding one's gone. Hide, maybe you can only have a couple there. Right, I'll do that, hide as well. Explore GPTs. I like having these ones here, which is Python. I hope I get the same one. Yeah, there we go, right at the top. This has got 2 million users. There's another one there. Oh, that's Python and Java. Yeah, okay, it's all the languages. I just kind of like want one expert, like one local expert to start the chat. And use, this is exactly the same thing. So now I can actually zoom in a bit, I guess, on here. So let's just maximize it up and then do right. So use of the any type. Right, there we go. A slightly different thing. I actually just put that, but that should be fair enough. The any type in Python is available in the typing module. It's going to give us an example here. I can go and copy and paste the code into the actual example. It is used to indicate that a variable parameter or return type can accept any type of value. Okay, so that's kind of like the key bit here. You can get any type of value. Now, it's got advantages and it's got disadvantages, right? Here's the advantage. It's a flexible and convenient tool in scenarios where type hints need to accommodate multiple or unknown types. So basically, if you're not sure what the type is, then you can use the keyword any. So you can use this type hint any. But I guess I wonder if it says it over there somewhere. Dynamic typing in statically typed codes. Okay, fine. It allows you to introduce flexibility to otherwise strictly typed code. This is particularly useful when you're working with libraries or APIs that return or accept varying data types. The type cannot be determined statically at development time. Now, I kind of like have a... Oh, here it is. That's the word I want to highlight there, which is right there. And it... Right, placeholder. There we go. Right. When transitioning legacy code bases to include type hints, any can serve as a placeholder for areas where the type is uncertain or too complex to annotate initially. Okay, and I guess this is the other piece here, right? It's annotating it initially. Kind of, what does that mean, right? Well, you get this flexibility in Python. Python gives you this flexibility, so now we can continue on with the code without sort of getting bogged down and predefining it and whatever our code. But a lot of other languages and coders from other languages are going to argue that that's poor practice. So, on one hand you can make headway, and on the other hand it's just poor practice because you can end up having it. You can end up writing loads and loads of code and having any all over the place basically. So here's its advantage. So here it is, actually great. Actually, it's got all of the stuff here. So advantages of any: you got the flexibility, ease of refactoring, so it can be used temporarily during refactoring to transition to stricter types. So again, it's got this placeholder thing. Readability indicates clearly to other developers that the type can be anything. Now, that's not I should actually caveat it should be anything for now until we figure out what it should be, and then we should be passing it into an object of a specific shape or type in itself, so that we know exactly what our type is. Otherwise, we're going to have bad practice where we go through our code not really knowing what the type should be, and that we can argue that's problematic. Right, and here's the potential downsides, right? Loss of type safety. So while any allows flexibility, it negates the primary benefit of type hints, ensuring type safety at runtime. Overuse may lead to bugs and unexpected behavior. I'm going to say it's got other... well, actually, maybe this is correct, ensuring type safety at runtime, because... if it's referring to when you put the dot and then you don't have to retype out anything else, so the IntelliSense kicks in, and the IntelliSense, if it knows what the type is, will kick out all of the methods of that type. So it's a huge advantage, and the use of any negates that. So like whilst it permits the code to, like, you know, you can continue to run the code, you lose a type hints. And I love type hints. I know, like, maybe some very old school people don't use type hints, but I find them fantastic because it exposes all of the valid methods rather than an invalid method. I might just jump over to some code just to explain exactly what that means. So, well, in fact, you know, I could even put it in here because I've got some stuff. So some code and plus, make it a bit bigger. I've imported the math module here, and I've created this function here, so I might as well just use this. And again, I should type in int, and b, let's say again, is an int. Okay, let's just change them actually to floats, just because we're adding two numbers. Float. Okay, now we should get back a type float, right? Because we've got a float plus a float. So what we should get back is like, I'll do it in the conventional way, which is return a plus b. So that's basically it. And then we can call our function. So results, so equals add numbers, and we can add two numbers, 1.4 plus 5. There we go. So I've added an integer and a float. That's perfectly allowable. And then I'll do print of results like that. Okay, and I'll run this piece of code. Happy days, it all should work. Just launching the kernel. And there we go, we get an answer. Hold on, we've got an add numbers. What's happening there? Type error, missing one required positional argument. Well, that's an interesting one. Oh, how about that? I forgot to put the comma straight in there. So there we go. Yeah, I should have actually got that straight from here. So when I actually expose the brackets here, it says A. So the first value is there, and then when I put the comma in, it jumps. So the blue jumps over to this bit here, B, and then if you just say 5, it's expecting a type of float, but it got an integer. It's fine. Python's fine adding floats to integers. That exists. So I run it again, and there we go. It works. We get, let's ignore this stuff at the top, but we get the answer of 6.4 at the bottom, which is 5 plus 1.4. Perfect. Now, it works perfectly fine as well. Now, let's just say I don't put float here. If I hover over this, it knows that it's any, because it knows that it's a float because it's got type inference. It sort of like knows what it is. But maybe if there's a potential for if a is less than 0, so if it's like a negative number, for example, then return none. Right. I wonder if return none. There we go. I wonder if what happens when we float that over here. So actually, still it goes as a float or none. It's actually telling you that it can be one or the other. So it's a bit more descriptive than the any, and I don't know if the any will cater for this. So someone's more than welcome to comment on that. But let's just remove all of these lines of code because I'm not necessarily sure I'll be using the math module. I could say, for example, here that it returns any, right? But any doesn't work exactly like this because I have to import it from. There's an unused import, but that's fine. From typing, right? So this is a built-in module. Import in simple module in Python any, right? I basically I barely ever use a typing module. Like barely ever, but you know, here's one case where you might use it, and now any is valid, and if I hover over this, it's going to say any, but more importantly, if I hover over this, it says any, and it's almost like I don't know what it's going to return to me, and that's kind of like, we're going to argue, not good. But in particular, I just wonder if I just remove this, if I remove the any from here for a sec and put it into the GPT. So if I hover back over this and copy that, and get the GPT DT back in here. So anyway, let's go back. Document usage. When using any document Y is being why it's being used, and if possible, when using any document why it's being used. I can't read English. Document why it's being used, and if possible, provide examples of expected outputs. So that's probably a bit better, maybe. So def validate input, any goes to a bool, if not instance, gives a value or a string. Yes, it's looking like something like this. So that was what I was going to get. What happens if the function returns this? I'll stick it like that. See what happens. I don't know, like what it's going to answer. When a function has a return type annotation of float pipe none, or its equivalent optional float. Right, so that's probably what you should be using, which is optional float. It indicates that the function can return either a float or a none. This is often used in scenarios where the function might fail, not find a result, or when there is no meaningful value to return. So, there's a way of handling it. Now, this is kind of like, this is telling me what I should have done maybe in the function in some way, which is you get a list of numbers, float, if not, okay, fine. I think it would have been, and that's kind of like why I don't use any keywords. I think even at the point where I didn't put any return type here, Python got the correct type inference without me having to have put the float or none, although here I could have put the float, and it's actually done a very similar thing. It's trying to get average, which is a list of, so it's got the same thing where it returns a float, instead of doing I did a sum, adding two numbers, but it checks something before, so it checks if this list is empty, and if it's empty, no numbers to calculate, so it returns a none. But I'm wondering, even at that point, like, do you actually return a none? Because I'm going to say that's poor practice. I would say something like, and I wonder if it does it, if result is not an okay, no result. Why use float none? I was just wondering if at any point, here it is, because that's what I was going to do, is something like this. I might actually get that, because I think this is better, right? Union with other types, floats, literal, yeah, okay. I think this is going to be better practice in the sense that I don't want to actually return none. I want to do this, which is, return some sort of error message. Let me just, I'll shrink it a tiny bit. I'll shrink it one notch. Cannot calculate. Okay, number less than 0, not allowed. Right, so something like that. And I wonder what happens now, because if it's less than 0, it just raises a value error. So if I go over here, beautiful, right? This now, it's not being detected as any, it doesn't give you the option now anymore. So we've removed the ambiguity from the function. The function only returns one thing. It returns a float. If it gets anything else, it's broken, right? The code breaks. So I don't have to do the handling, should we say. Well, okay, I still should handle or something. But I'm always expecting to get something. Now, if I didn't get something, like, what am I going to do? Maybe you can envisage examples where you get two types and then you do the handling outside of the function. I'm still going to argue that you should probably always find cases where you do the handling inside of the function, because what would you do? You'd have to pass through the code and not do your next piece of computation. As in, even if I didn't handle it correctly here, I would have had to have handled it here, and put like if none. I'd have had to put if add numbers, or yeah, if add So something like that. I'd have had to do a check like that, and then do, you know, some code, whatever the code is, right? That's what I'd have. So I'd have had to handle it somewhere. So I may have thrown an error there. So Control Z. You know, I could have raised the value error now. So all I would have done is basically move this piece of code somewhere, assuming that I was going to handle that none at some point. So I'm always going to handle that. I was always going to handle that case where like it didn't work or something like that, like it was a non-permitted value. So that's kind of like the use of any. I'll have a little look and see if there's any other uses of the word any, or any other cases. But like, it's basically, for me, it seems like it's a placeholder. That's kind of like what it seems like to me. So I remove this, it's handled in the function, and I can run this function, and I get 6.4 as the answer down at the bottom. So happy days, that works. Don't know why that extended itself to that. And I'm just going to jump back very, very quickly to the actual GPT just to check. So instead of returning this none thing, you could, so where you don't know your type, you could raise an exception to indicate an error or absence of a value. And yeah, I think coders from a lot of other languages will agree with this method, and they might be unhappy or uncomfortable with the fact that Python allows for something else to be passed through. Now, you know, coders using Python are going to argue the converse and go, well, I've got the flexibility, and this is actually like a big argument, which is it's sort of like a language for adults, if that makes sense, as in, like, you know, it behaves the way that you want it to behave. So it's up to you if you want to write badly written code and, you know, stick things, or leave it unclear as to what the types are. Well, that's your problem for writing bad code, rather than having the language kind of like force it upon you. So, but let's see. You could return the default value. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things that could have been done, and this is another particular thing that could have been done, which is exactly that, which is I don't even raise an error, right? But I just put return 0, right? Points, there we go, right, 0.0, just to be clear, whatever. So now I don't need this anymore, right? And again, the type hinting, fantastic, it's a float. If I was to put 0 here, I wonder what the type hint would be. Yeah, because it's got the literal 0, so I'd have to put one more dot in there, and then it would be allowable. So, because that means it's a float. So, and someone reading the code would understand that. I think it'd be clearer just doing that, even though dot was sufficient. And that just tells the function, you know, that just tells the user that, like, in both cases, I look for the return function, and if there were any other returns, any exits from the function, if they all return the same type, fantastic, then we know what we're going to, we know the type of that this function is going to return into our result. And that was exactly the issue that I didn't like to see. Now, it came from a much more complex thing. It came from Boto 3, and I don't even know. I'd have to look in the module and understand it. But the alternative, and this is what I was going to suggest, is that in the case where you do you return, so let's say you do return a none. So, you know, we have this kind of like unknown thing over here. So in that case, here we've got so we've got two types, and I might have hinted this, you know, to even at this any is, if I was going to use this further, I would just do something like this, right? If I knew what the type was going to be, I might actually type hint it like this, which is type hint result, which is of type float, right? And that kind of like puts it all correct again, because later down in the code, well, anywhere down in the code, I now know that result is of type float. So it's sort of like, it's almost like, this is an example of where you kind of like just about get away with it, because here on entry, right, on the entry point over here, it's kind of like, oh yeah, this could return me anything. But like then I do this thing and I go and check. So I've gone and looked at this code and I go, it's got this none and it's got this. I don't know why it's doing this at the moment. Maybe it's allowing for zero, but I know that I want to get this back, and I'm expecting it to be of type float now because these two inputs here are floats. This is a float. This is a float. So it must be of type float, and I want to use the float methods later on, and you'll see here. So what does it mean to use the float method? Right, result dot, I wonder what methods are. All of these things here now pop up, right? There's not that many methods in float, so it might have been a better example for string, but I guess I could get the hex of it. So I could put hex equals result.hex and then hex. Right. Now, hex here returns something of type string. I know exactly what this hex is going to be here. This is going to be a string, and I couldn't have got this if I didn't do the type hint. So like when I run this, we'll just see we get this hex value down here. So I've run it, we've got the hex value. That's fantastic. But more importantly, if I remove this, you can see that the color changes. So it changed from yellow to white. So I guess just have a look. If I circle it in blue here, like this hex here, when I go and type in float, it knows it's a method, right? So it's turned it to yellow right in here, like so it's understood that it's there. More importantly is this, is if I remove it, it goes back to white. But if I do this, which is if I remove the dot and then try and do it again, the methods don't pop up. Nothing pops up, right? So now I can type in hex like that, try to run it, throws me an error. Why? Because this hex I've typed in with a capital. I didn't know, there was no type hinting, there was no help, right? So it just helps to do it this way. Now I could have also just type hinted here. So I'll remove some of the stuff on, what is it, delete all that. I could have done result is of type float over here. Anywhere now down below under line 20, result automatically is of type something or other. Now, when I'm typing my code, not now, it didn't pop it up, but if I do result dot, it now pops up again, and I've got it, and it's all fantastic, hunky-dory, it all works. Now, I wonder if I do dot hex. Right, the warning flag kind of like is already in there, because it does let me do this. Right, it hasn't put, funnily, a squiggly underscore. I think some linters would pick this up, right? I pick it up from the colorization, so I'm cool with it. But I want that to be picked up straight away, because this is not a method of result. This is going to throw me an attribute error. So this is fine, and I live with the autocomplete. I do this. I go no further than, well, I might even just pull it straight out of the menu. But I go no further than really 1 or 2 letters of the first few letters. I live with that. It's fantastic. It works. That's it. And also, when you do that, and the other hints that it is or isn't working is when you do the brackets, everything pops up. So it tells me, so it recognizes exactly what this method is. And I can go and look at this method as well. So go to def. And I can see somewhere in the code base, wherever it's, where is the definition of hex there? Oh, there it is, right here. So it's a, well, it's a C core module thing. This is what this string to the triple ellipses means. So it's part of the built-in methods in Python. But that's basically it. So I know exactly what it is. I know where everything. I know what my types are at all point in time. I should have never have had the any keyword, we're going to say, because, like, you know, we said let's raise something or return a 0 because we wanted to get something. And here I'd get a result. I wouldn't get, like, necessarily the result I was maybe expecting, so you could go, well, there, that's where you want the none. Maybe I would have wanted to raise the value error. My argument would be, we'll raise the value error then. So, you know, bring this up here first, right? And never return that. So, you know, you've got your choices as to what you want to do. And yeah, that's basically it. So any is a placeholder in Python. Is very much a placeholder. Basically, try not to use it, or use it as little as possible, as far as I'm concerned. Which means use it none. Um, the typing makes it clear to developers and type checkers. Tools that the function may return none. Improves code readability. If you are doing code readability, like if you haven't completed your code, right? And so it is like, it's not like, oh, it's completely banned. You know, where you see any, it means like, oh, I'm going to come back later and then like and fix it. So I might do something like a to do, right? Notice that to do comes out in blue, like in here. So blah blah to do. So not even a to do. Right, it's got to be capitals, right? And it's a reminder to the coder that I'm going to come back to this piece of code, and I might treat an any in the same way as I treat a to do, as in it just lets me pass through. I know I've got to fix something later on. I'm, you know, I'm not 100% sure of the type, but I just want to get through the code and like move forwards. And that's that. You know, a coder in a different language, C++, Java, will say, I don't know, like Java coders start watching this. If you've got a comment, by all means let me know. But is there an equivalent to the anything? From what I know from like sort of strongly typed languages, I don't think that's going to be the case. But anyway, that's the any type, which comes from the typing module, and I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to jump, if you like that little overview of the use of the any typing of the any typing, then do a thumbs up, a like, a follow, and the rest, and subscribe. And yeah, that's it.